Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sunday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, production of SEC Extra over at D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, going to take you through a wild Saturday, a run-scoring Saturday around the SEC and get you ready for Sunday's games. Before we do any of that, though, I have to let you know that this episode of Weekend Waypoints and every episode of Weekend Waypoints this season is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Get ready for a new season of fishing fun with Academy Sports and Outdoors and reel in the best gear at low prices every day. Plus, Academy offers easy ways to shop and save time, like free 1 hour in-store or curbside pickup on academy.com orders. All right. Don't look now, folks, but while you were sleeping, SEC teams scored 20 or so more runs. That's a joke, but only kind of, because, man, it was an offensive day around the league. We will talk about when we talk about potential hitters of the day, you'll see it. The list is quite long today. Longest list we've had all season. I thought that list might be longest during non-conference play when teams are beating up on overmatched pitching, but no, it turns out the second Saturday of SEC conference play is the most offensive day we've had. I don't know if that's true by run scored, but man, it sure felt like it. So let's dive right in with our game of the day. Let me pull up the box score. It is Auburn 8, Kentucky 7. And man, a wild one. And it felt like it was, only one of a handful of games that were just kind of wild in this way. But Auburn has a lead for a lot of this game, certainly after that 4-run sixth. But Kentucky scores 4 in the bottom of the ninth to tie it, send it to extras, and then kind of deflating for Kentucky. That run in the 11th inning, as you can see here, it's a lengthy scoring summary, but Ike Irish, a solo home run in the top of the 11th inning to put Auburn ahead for good. And that's just, if you're Kentucky, that's just kind of deflating. You fight so hard to get back in that game to tie it, get it to extras, and then you just can't finish it off. And, it feels like for the Wildcats so far this season, I don't feel like they're that far off. They're not getting blown off the field for the most part. It just feels like all the coin flips have kind of gone the other direction so far, and maybe that'll even out. But they have to keep it from being something that, just totally ends up demoralizing them, right? Like, they just have to kind of keep on keeping on and just hope the wins will come at some point. So, but a tough one there. On the Auburn side of things, as I flip over to their stats, Cole Fisher, best start. It's a relatively low bar, but Cole Fisher, his best outing this season, 4 innings, giving up just the 2 hits and 1 run. Still not missing a ton of bats. It's not dominant by any stretch of the imagination, but it was the best outing that he's had so far this season. And Ike Irish, with his, with including that home run for the day, 5 for 6 with 2 home runs. Having him back in the lineup, it goes without saying, kind of a game changer. When he went down a couple weeks ago, it wasn't as if he was really swinging the bat that great. And so it was like, okay, well, you'd rather have him, but the rest of the lineup is actually carrying a heavier load right now. Well, in this one, we saw when he's swinging the bat well, we saw that he can really carry a lineup himself. So game of the day, Auburn 8, Kentucky 7. Auburn also, it should be said, Auburn also doing a nice job this season of, things haven't been perfect. They're still figuring things out of the mound, but they're doing it mostly in wins as opposed to in losses. Feels like Kentucky's kind of on the other side of that coin where some things are going well. They've still got some questions to answer, and it's happening for them in losses mostly. Auburn's been the more positive side of that coin there. So kudos to them on that. Okay, let's look over to his comments. We got some folks waiting. Good morning, vis-a-vis. I see you there. Sean Miller says, pitcher of the week, the entire Vandy staff, 49 strikeouts versus A&M on the weekend. Yeah, they pitched it well, but A&M obviously just struggling, right? 0-6 in the league now for A&M, and that's, I'd have to ask Mark Etheridge, because he's more of kind of the nerdy data and stats guy, but what teams who start 0-6 in LSU, I saw a comment about LSU, and so I said LSU in SEC play. Teams who start 0-6, like what do they do? Like how many of them have come back to be regional teams, right? Because we've seen teams in the SEC dig holes and then climb their way out. But the last couple of years, I don't remember any of them being 0-6. Maybe they were, and I just forgot. So maybe we'll dig into that a little bit, Mark and I, and kind of give some background on that, because there are some teams not necessarily 0-6 yet. Some teams might get there at the end of the day, but there's a lot of, not just this 0-6, but 1-5. So it'd be interesting to see how deep those holes have to be for you to be able to say, woof, maybe they're just in too deep a hole. All right. James Gillum says, Joe, can you come take my shoestrings? He corrected himself there in the next comment. Shoestrings from watching South Carolina. Yeah, it hasn't been a great weekend. You felt pretty good, James, against Oklahoma, or at least I did, of like, hey, like this obviously isn't the most talented South Carolina team we've ever seen, but I thought they played pretty well against Oklahoma. And yeah, you lose that series, and that was a bummer, but I thought, you could build on that a little bit. But this weekend against Arkansas, it just really hasn't gone well, really in much of any way. So, yeah, I don't blame you for being a little bit beside yourself there, James. Jeremy Scott says, Roll Tide, softball rubber game at Texas, and A&M today, and basketball tonight. Yeah, tough loss yesterday on the diamond for Alabama to lose that series, though. I think for the Tide, you have to be happy with a 4-2 start in SEC play, kind of no matter how you got it. But yeah, obviously a lot going on for the Tide these days, all sports wise, and true largely of the SEC. A lot of SEC teams left fighting in the men's tournament, the women's as well, but the men's tournament, and big win for Arkansas in basketball. Speaking of which, John Calipari, speaking of digging a hole in conference play, 0-5 in conference play for that team, and made it to the tournament, and now making some noise, beating St. John's yesterday. So that's your little 10 seconds of basketball content there. Neil Simmons, one team didn't score much. Go Big Orange. Yeah, Alabama certainly didn't score a lot yesterday. That is for sure. We will talk about that. Inside LSU baseball with Jason Armstrong. Hi, Jason. Good to see you. Starting rotations and offensive firepower get most of the headlines, but I think that this is the year of the bullpen. If you can't close out the last 9 to 11 outs, it's hard to win. I mean, I agree, Jason. Like, I think it's been a little bit like that for a couple of years in the SEC, but I agree with you generally, where it feels like this year might be even more acute in that way, where that's the biggest thing that matters. But I'm totally with you. Like, not only do you have to be able to close out the last 9 to 11 outs, I would also say you have to have guys to close out a 14 to 12 game. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but you look at some of the scores yesterday and it's not that far off, right? Oklahoma 13, Mississippi State 11, Ole Miss 17, Mizzou 10. Like, you have to be able to have just one more guy. You've used 6 or 7 guys already, and you need to turn the ball over to one more guy. And like, who do you have that you have some trust in that can come and get the final outs in an ugly, high scoring affair? I think that's going to be huge this year. I totally agree on that, Jason. Carl Dunn mentions LSU bullpen failed yesterday. Time to bounce back. Yeah, it got kind of ugly there at certain points for the LSU bullpen. I think they're still obviously it's not that they weren't trying to win yesterday's game, but I do think they're still trying to like figure out how those pieces fit together, because I like their depth on the mound. They just got to figure out which ones they trust. Jacob Myers came on. It felt like they've been maybe toying with the idea of a little bigger role for Myers. And then, he comes in, Jacob Myers, and he comes in yesterday, and you kind of saw the downside of his stuff, which is like, man, if you really need to strike out, he's a guy for you. But also, if you can't afford a walk, he's probably not your guy, right? So perhaps he's not somebody they're moving into a more prominent role. I just think they're still experimenting, I guess, is what I'm getting at there. Joey, overall hitting for Tennessee might not be like last year, but overall pitching might be better, and AJ Russell isn't back yet. Yeah, I could see that, certainly. Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of thinking about it. Yeah, I think that definitely could be right. I mean, how could the hitting not be just not quite as good as last year, right? Just considering who's now in pro ball. Still a very good offense, obviously, but I think you might be right. The pitching might be, certainly with the young guys doing what they're doing. You have to like that if you're a Tennessee fan. Carl Dunn says, I know this is not baseball related, but LSU softball has its best start at 28-1. Shout out to LSU softball. That's a good start. Nicholas Doherty, is Florida, good morning, Nicholas. Is Florida in trouble? 0-5 in conference is tough to come back from. I know a lot of injuries, but this start has not been ideal. I agree. I just feel like it's been a perfect storm of stuff to hit Florida. You have a tough series to start the season. Like, I don't know that anybody goes into Lindsey Nelson Stadium last weekend and comes out of there with more than a win, right? So it's just a tough draw. And then you get a Georgia team that is perfectly positioned to take advantage of where Florida's hurting most right now, which is in the rotation, especially since Liam Peterson got skipped this week. But considering that Capola's out and you've got a freshman in Aiden King trying to carry a lot of weight right now, and Jake Clemente's back, but he missed a start at some point this season, so they've just been banged up. And for all the trouble Georgia has had on its own on the mound, it's still a team that can mash. And so Florida is just kind of in a place where I don't know that there are two teams that they would be less excited to have to deal with to start the seasons. But so they are in trouble at 0-5. No doubt about that. Like, today's game is actually, I would say, low key, really important for Florida. Like, you just can't fall 0-6. I mean, that sounds simplistic, but I think it's true. The more I talk about this, the more I really do think Marker Eye needs to do the digging on how do teams that start at 0-6, how do they finish, and then compare that maybe to the 1-5 teams, and just talk about like how important is it not to get swept the first 2 weekends of SEC play. That might be interesting to see. Daniel Ordoin says, "Oh man, my Tigers blew it. 0 walks on Friday, a plethora of walks on Saturday." Yeah, and like there's more to it than that. And I'm not saying, Daniel, you thought that was all of the issue, but it goes to show just how important that single metric is. You can't give away the free 90s. Like, that's just kind of baseball 101. So you're absolutely right. Ryan says, "I don't see how anyone beats Tennessee in a 3-game series. You can get them once, but you run out of good pitchers. Their hitting depth is too much to handle." Yeah, generally, Ryan, I think I agree with your sentiment in that Tennessee is going to be favored in every series this weekend. I guess what I would just say is, like, weird stuff happens, man. Like, and sometimes you can lose a series and it doesn't have to mean anything. You just have like a weekend where, for whatever reason, you're not swinging it well. Somebody who's pitched great all year just gets blitzed. It's like a laser show against him, and all of a sudden you kick the ball around in a game that you should have won. So I agree with the sentiment. Like, I think they're going to be the favorite in every series this season, barring something unforeseen. But this is also baseball, so that kind of stuff can happen, and it's why the game is as much fun as it is. Kobe Walker says, "Are you worried about Mississippi State?" Yeah, kind of for the same reasons as Florida, right? You just, like, how much of a hole can you afford to dig? But I'd say more so with Mississippi State than Florida. I'm more worried about. Well, let me put it this way. With Florida, I think it's not all their injuries, but I do think that is a large part of it. With State, I worry that they just don't have enough dudes. Like, they're talented, quite talented in a lot of places, right? Like, Noah Sullivan's hitting great, Ace Reese, a couple home runs. Pico Khan is a Friday guy as good as just about anybody in the league. They've got a couple bullpen guys you really like. But it's like, beyond their top guys, it kind of falls off a little bit. And it's like, just do they have the depth of dudes, which is a funny phrase, to be better as the season goes on? Maybe that answer is yes. And my hunch about this is wrong. But with Florida, I don't doubt those exist. It's just that they have like 5 of them hurt right now. And some you're not getting Kyle Jones back, right? But you hope you're getting the others back at some point. And so I don't worry about it being a skill issue with Florida. With Mississippi State, I do worry that, especially now they've dug this hole, they just might not be good enough to dig out of it. Maybe they will. We've been wrong before about teams, but that's more. It's a different worry, but worry nonetheless. Jeffrey Baumgartner says, "I wonder if DVH is considering bringing Gackle out of the pen and maybe start Jimenez until Gage Wood is healthy." I think you have to consider it another not very good outing for Gackle. And yes, he's given up some runs, and yes, he's walking some guys. But what's most alarming to me is he's not getting strikeouts. He's not getting guys to swing and miss. He's not fooling people. And that's last year. I mean, he was dynamite. He was electric. And I saw him as, I won't say a sure thing, but I think we had him ranked in our starting pitcher rankings here at D1 Baseball, like in the top 5, top 10, something like that. I forget where we had him, but we had him way up there. Like, we were all just all in on him making that transition. And so, is he not 100% healthy? Nothing about that has been reported, but maybe that's a possibility. Is it mental? Like, is starting just there's their mental piece of starting the games that hasn't clicked with Gackle? Is it that good tape is out on him? We don't know. Mark Etheridge is there today for that series finale. He mentioned that he's going to kind of ask around and see if he can, get a feel for what's going on there with Gackle. So maybe he'll have something by the end of the day that's kind of illuminating in that front. But certainly it is confounding. I agree with you there, Jeffrey. GA Fisher guy on X says, do any of UGA's starters stand out to you as CWS 7-inning stud types of pitchers? Outside of Curley yesterday, they have been rough. I agree. I would say once he's fully stretched out and healthy, I would say Colton Smith is that guy. He's just had some tough luck. He tweaked his back opening weekend, so he got, he didn't start that weekend, and then he got sick, and so he lost. I heard he lost like 10 pounds. So that's brutal. Now he's feeling better, but obviously it takes some time to get that strength back, to get that stamina back. I don't know how long that'll take, but if he's at full strength here, in the next few weeks, I feel pretty good about him as that guy. I think we saw a lot of that last year. But your point is well taken in that, like, I do think you kind of need those guys, at least one, to really be a serious national title contender. We see teams get to Omaha that don't necessarily have, multiple starting pitchers you can trust to go 7 innings and throw 115 pitches or whatever. But those teams don't typically challenge to win national titles. So if Georgia wants to be seriously considered that way, it'll maybe have to find, it may have to find another one of those guys. And maybe it's Curley. I don't know. Like, yesterday's outing was certainly good. Just given the high effort of Curley, the high effort of Curley's delivery, I do worry if maybe he's just not the right guy for that, like to be a true, like, hey, we need you to go out there and throw 100 plus pitches. Maybe he is, maybe I'm wrong. But we'll obviously see. All right. Great comments, guys. Love that. All right. Let's talk hitter and pitcher of the day. Share my screen out here. I'm with the hitters. I may not read every name here because take a look at this. It's a lot of names. I can barely fit them all on the screen without having to cut somebody off there. But you see there, the hitter of the day, Ike Irish of Auburn, 5 for 6 with a double and 2 home runs. I mean, it's not just the 5 hits, although he was the only guy to get 5 hits in the league yesterday. And it's not just the 2 home runs, but it's, one of those home runs was in the 11th inning, as clutch can be. Huge to have him back in the lineup if you're Auburn. We'll move quickly through this. In that loss for Kentucky, Griffin Cameron out of the bottom of the lineup, 3 for 4 with a walk. Georgia has 4 guys on this list. I think the most interesting one is Christian Adams, 4 for 6 with a double and a home run, because those 3 other guys, Zaborowski, Obi, and Branch. Zaborowski's obviously been hotter than Obi and Branch, but Christian Adams has not really been a regular for Georgia. He's not been really in the mix for them. But a big game yesterday, 4 for 6, the double and a home run, just shows that they have incredible depth on the offensive side of the ball. Tennessee's got 3 guys here, including Ariel Antigua, 3 for 4. He's a defense first infielder, but hey, 3 for 4 day with a double, you'll take that. Dalton Bargo, a couple hits, a triple and a home run, and he's heating up. And so you talk about depth. That's another piece for Tennessee that's a dangerous bat that hasn't necessarily been in the lineup every day for them. So even more depth for Tennessee, the getting richer in that regard. Ryder Helfrich for Arkansas in that in their win over South Carolina, 3 for 5 day for him. The offensive production for Arkansas, he scored 12 runs. It was pretty spread out throughout the lineup, which is good news. Obviously, that's what you want. But even though they scored 12 runs, he's the only guy on this list. Vanderbilt finished its sweep of Texas A&M. A great sweep for Vanderbilt. Yes, A&M is reeling right now, so it doesn't mean as much as we thought it would mean before the season started. But nonetheless, Vanderbilt, not a lot of sweeps in SEC play last year. So to get that and be able to turn the math in your favor in terms of that is big. So Brody Johnston, 3 for 4 with a home run. Mike Mancini, 3 for 3 with a walk. Oklahoma and Mississippi State was a wild 13-11 game. There were a lot of wild swings here. Just a couple of big hits down the stretch for Oklahoma to pull out and get a lead there. Easton Carmichael, a big day. Jackson Willits, a big day. Dawson Willis, a big day, 3 for 5 with a home run, and the home run was absolutely scorched to left field. It was a really good swing for Dawson Willis, a guy who's really, really talented. He's kind of raw offensively, thought of as more of a defender right now, but clearly there's some strength and some bat speed there. I think he's got a chance to be a guy who gets a lot better as the season goes on, and he just gets at bats under his belt. On the Mississippi State side, Sawyer Reeves, a big game. Ace Reese, a 2-home run game. Noah Sullivan, 3 hits. Hunter Hines, 3 hits. Hines is hitting near the bottom of the order now because he just hasn't clicked yet necessarily, but a big game there. Obviously, Mississippi State's going to need him if they're going to dig out of the early hole they're in. Big game for him yesterday. Ole Miss beat Mizzou 17-10. Perhaps I did not see this game. Perhaps it was a wind blowing out kind of day at Taylor Stadium in Columbia. Those days happen. But bunch of home runs for Ole Miss. But Mitchell Sanford, 3 for 5 with a double, a home run, and a walk. Isaac Humphrey with a couple of hits. They were both home runs. On the Mizzou side, Caden Nicoletto, 3 for 4 with a double. Jackson Lovich, 2 for 5 with a triple and 4 runs batted in. Brock Daniels, 2 for 5 with a triple, a home run, 4 runs batted in. So kudos to Ole Miss for dealing with these elements. Seems like it was kind of it's been a weird couple of days, and things get weird in Columbia, Missouri. Just ask any team that's lost a series there and just doesn't totally understand how it happened. So good on them to kind of deal with that, with one more game to go today, obviously. But then, Mizzou offensively has actually been kind of dangerous. If you'd have told me that they'd put up, 10 runs and they did a decent job against LSU on the road last weekend, if you'd have given me their offensive numbers so far, I would have been like, well, they might actually be pretty good, but the pitching just hasn't held up in the way we thought it would for Missouri. Texas in their win over LSU 11-7. We talked a little bit with the comments about LSU's bullpen woes. Texas took advantage. Jalen Flores, 3 hits. Rylan Galvan, a couple of hits, a couple of walks. Adrian Rodriguez, the freshman, 3 for 4. And then on the LSU side, Jared Jones, 3 for 5, continues his outstanding season. And Chris Stanfield, 2 for 3 with a double and a walk. But the hitter of the day, Ike Irish, Auburn, that 5 for 6 day. Incredible effort for the returning catcher there. All right. Let's get back to some comments here. Let's see. Yeah, Joey says, great to see Antigua have an offensive breakout because his defense is spectacular. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is if he can give you something offensively, you feel pretty good. I mean, at bare minimum, Antigua is going to be a guy as the season goes on, especially once we get to the postseason, that I think you're going to see a decent bit as a defensive replacement for them. And so if you end up in situations where you bring him on late in the game and then you end up in extra innings, as happens, so the situation I'm talking about where it's tight game late, you bring in a pinch runner, you bring in a defensive replacement, then you end up in an extra inning game and your defensive replacement or your pinch runner ends up getting 3 at-bats somehow because it goes to 14 innings or whatever. If Antigua can be a guy that, look, he's not going to be as impactful offensively as whoever he replaced probably as a defensive replacement, but if he can be a competitive at-bat and put together good at-bats and get some hits here and there, that's obviously icing on the cake for a guy who's just really, really, really good defensively. Moonshine says, what's up, Joe? Asking for a friend. That made me laugh. Hello, Moonshine. Todd Harris says, the Cats are breaking my heart 2 days in a row. They gave away 2 games they should have won. Got to salvage a win today. Yeah, I agree, Todd. I said at the top, I don't think the Cats are playing that poorly. Now they've obviously had some, the dropped pop-up Friday, yesterday, to do all that work to come back and then to lose that game is tough. But it feels like they're close and just everything has gone the other direction for them. So maybe they're due to catch a break a little bit. But I also agree that, yeah, it is important, Todd, that they get a win in that finale today. Sean Miller brings up a good point. Looking forward to A&M UK next week. Winner will have a chance to get some momentum. Loser will be more or less buried. Yeah, I agree. That's an interesting point. I think both teams are probably looking at that series as a little bit of an opportunity to get right and get some momentum headed in the right direction. So it's a good point. I'm totally with you there, Sean. All right, let's talk pitcher of the day, and you'll be shocked by how much shorter this list is than the hitters. Here it is. It's 5 names technically, but it's 3 line items. The pitcher of the day is the combination of Tegan Kuhns and Braden Krenzel for Tennessee. They combined for 8 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, only 1 of which was earned, 3 walks, 11 strikeouts. A couple of freshmen really stepping up in the series finale there for Tennessee, and it feels a little like Tennessee has maybe found its Sunday combination. right? So obviously Coons was a big name recruit. So to see him start to put it together is awesome for Tennessee, and Krenzel doing a nice job behind him. I expect to see, until further notice, it seems like that's the Sunday combination for Tennessee behind Doyle and Marcus Phillips in the rotation. Mentioned Brian Curley earlier. He's also on that list. 5 shutout innings, did a nice job there. And then Aiden Jimenez and Will McIntyre for Arkansas. They got brought up earlier in the chat with Aiden Jimenez maybe as a possible, rotation guy, but they came on after Gabe Gackle. The game, kind of got ugly early where both teams scored. Jake McCoy for South Carolina didn't get out of the first inning. Gabe Gackle didn't get out of the second. So it kind of looked like it was going to be, similar to some of these other games we saw yesterday, where it's just like both teams use 5 or 6 guys, but the duo of Aiden Jimenez and Will McIntyre settled the game down for Arkansas and put them in position to win that game relatively routinely. But they combined for 7 1/3 innings, 5 hits, no runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts. Good stuff there from those guys. Game of the day for Sunday is going to be LSU Texas. Rubber match there. To me, this is where LSU has to show the depth that I've been talking about, that others have talked about and written about. It was a tough day for the bullpen yesterday. So what do you got today? You got to find some guys, behind Shores. You need some guys to step up, give them some innings, whether it's Shores going deep or whether it's, bullpen guys stepping up. You got to show something today in terms of mound depth to win that. And I think Texas, this is another opportunity to show hey, we can win ugly, because you get the feeling that this game might be high scoring. It might be back and forth. It, might come down to who plays cleaner baseball, all that kind of stuff. And this Texas team, I don't think this team, it is a talented team. Let me be clear about that first. But it strikes me as a team that, Schlossnagle and staff will probably have more talented Texas teams in the coming years. And yet this team is doing an excellent job just figuring it out on the fly and winning games, especially as it has to kind of cobble things together on the mound right now. So seems like as I like to call them, scratch and claw Sunday at Dish Falk Field, but we certainly will we'll see. All right. That is going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints, production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. Enjoy the Sunday around the SEC, everyone. I know I'm looking forward to it. I will talk to you again Friday morning as we get ready for another weekend of SEC baseball. I will be next weekend at South Carolina, Tennessee in Columbia. Be my first look in person at the Vols this season. Very much looking forward to that. So I will, in addition to be doing Weekend Waypoints, we'll be providing coverage of that series next weekend. Can't wait to get there. All right, folks, enjoy your Sunday. I'll talk to you soon.